vi trekker oss nærmere minber.
Capitalize on that reality. We can learn from those experiences, and we can start to implement those financial products and those financial services within our communities in these countries where we live in. Moving forward, Islam basically is not a religion. Islam does not call itself as a madhab. Rather, Islam calls itself a deen. Inna deena inda Allahi al-Islam. And the main reason behind that is that madhab is an incomplete term. It does not encompass everything that we do. But Islam provides detailed guidelines about everything, every single thing that we do in our lives. You know, from believing in Allah, how to believe in Allah, how to have faith in Allah, and then how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then once it has provided us with detailed guidelines to that, it does not stop there, but rather it moves forward and provides us guidelines on how to interact with each other. What our social interactions are going to be like, how are we going to treat our parents, how they're going to treat the children, how we're going to treat our brothers and sisters and our uncles and aunts and all the different relatives, how we're going to get along, how we're going to be towards our neighbors. Everything about that is detailed, is explained in great detail for us to be able to practice it. These are not just simple, so just simple some commandments where it says that be good to thy neighbor and that's it. Rather, it tells you how to strike a balance between your parents and your own job, how to strike a balance between your parents and your wife and your children, where the rights of the parents are supposed to supersede and where the rights of the wives or the wife or the children are supposed to take priority. So Islam gives detailed guidelines in terms of our social interactions. And this is where a lot of the religions in the world, they stop. They will tell you how to perhaps get married. They might tell you how to end that marriage, how to exit that contract of marriage, but they will not go beyond that. And that is why one of the main reasons, one of the main objections that the disbelievers had on the Prophet ﷺ, that they could not comprehend how a prophet, someone who claimed nubuwah, was walking in the markets and trading and selling and buying and selling and doing everything just like a common man. That was one of their main objections that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. But on the other hand, Islam goes so far as to give a trustful, honest, trustworthy, and a truthful businessman the status with the Anbiya in the hereafter. التاجر الصدوق الأمين مع النبيين والصديقين. That a businessman who is honest, who is trustworthy, on the Day of Judgment, he will be raised amongst the Anbiya and the Prophets and amongst the Siddiqeen. So doing trade, doing business is a means of us, of Muslims, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where the beauty of Islam comes in, that Islam is not just limited to our places of worship, but rather it is a part of our lives when we are sitting in our shops, when we are sitting in our workplace. Wherever we are doing financial transactions, Islam has its guidelines there. Islam is there to remind us that even in the places of business, we have submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are to continue doing our businesses, conducting our businesses in the manner and the way that Allah and His Prophet ﷺ have outlined it. And even in those financial transactions, once again, it's not just guidelines. It's not just broad general guidelines or principles. Rather, it is details on which transaction, the classifications of transaction. This transaction is sahih. This transaction is invalid. This is batil. This is fasid. There's different ways. There's different ways of sale. There's different ways to have partnerships. There's rules and principles for partnerships, all of which have been derived from the Quran and Sunnah, the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the ways of the companion, and which give us a framework on how to do our financial transactions. So that is why we need to look towards, insight towards our own deen, and our own Islam, and become aware and learn these things. So we spend time in maktab. Teachers teach us how to pray. They teach us how to have the right faith and the right belief. They teach us how to, give. Maybe when we grow older, the Aimma, they tell us how to give zakah, and they tell us how to spend in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we also need to understand that how to do financial transactions, there's also detailed rulings on that, and we need to do them in the right manner also. Just the same way, when we pray, and if we miss a rak'ah or we miss something, right away we call the Imam, or we go to the Imam and we ask him, or the scholar, or perhaps Imam Google, whoever we follow. But we go and ask them, and we were concerned that there is something wrong, and I need to make my prayer valid, ensure that it is valid in the terms of this dunya. The same way, we need to be concerned and worried about the impact of our financial transactions. And the reason for that is because the financial transactions, the way we earn our income, the way we earn our money, has a direct impact and a direct correlation with the actions that come out of our body. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كلوا من الطيبات واعملوا صالحا. يا أيها الرسل كلوا من الطيبات واعملوا صالحا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered that eat good things, pure things, and perform good actions. And the Mufassirun have mentioned that these two things, mentioning them, both of these things together, eating halal, eating tayyib, and performing good actions, have a direct correlationship with each other. Means that if we, just as we say, garbage in and garbage out. So if we're going to be putting in halal food in our body, the actions coming out of our body are going to be good. And if we're going to not be concerned about what we are putting in our body, what we are eating, or what we are putting in the mouths of our next generation, of our children, then the actions coming out of their bodies are also going to be against of disobedience, or going to be the ones that are further away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is another reason why it is very important to be concerned about the source of income, where we're earning from, the financial transactions that we're performing, whether riba is becoming a part of our house or not, whether we're earning from a transaction or a matter which is perhaps invalid from the perspective of Sharia, from the perspective of Islam. We need to be concerned about this. The Prophet ﷺ mentions in a detailed hadith, and he draws a picture of a man who the hadith depicts the picture of a person who travels, who walks perhaps, or maybe rides a camel to perform Hajj. And because of that journey, his clothes are, they're filled with dirt, and his hair is disheveled. And he raises his hand, yamuddu yadayhi. He raises his hands towards the sky, and he's saying, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. And the Prophet ﷺ says that even after making so much effort, his dua, how can it be accepted when his clothes, when his food is of haram, when his drink is of haram, and when his clothes are of haram? Meaning that having haram be a part of our clothing and our food and our drinks and our financial system, or our personal financial system, it is a reason for our du'as not being accepted in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So not only is it that if we earn halal, we will do good deeds, good actions will come out of us, but also if we are not cautious about earning haram or earning impermissible things, then the actions, the dua we're going to do, that might not even be accepted in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in front of Allah. So, and another reason, another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentions the 5 questions that every person must answer on the Day of Judgment before their feet can move, before they can move from their place in front of Allah on that day. And that is the Day of Judgment, where every single one of us has to stand in front of Him. We have to answer those questions by ourselves. Our parents won't be there, our brothers and sisters and those people around us, our Aimma, our Imams, they won't be there to help us or support us or give us, something in our, tell us the answer in our ears. But rather, we will be held responsible by ourselves and one of those questions is where we earned it from, our income, and where we spent it. Right? So it's a matter of great concern, and it is not just as simple, as easy as, I've prayed my salah and I've done my dua, and now everything else I do in the place of my business is my my own business. It's none of your concern. It's not like that, but rather it is the concern of the Prophet, and the concern of Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is why it is of great importance to understand what are those elements and things that we need to avoid, and what are those things that, what are those ways through which we can ensure that our income and our earning is halal. So generally when we speak about Islamic guidelines, there is a maxim, a legal principle that the fuqaha have derived from the Quran and Sunnah, which is that permissibility is the default state of all things except in three matters. Except in the matters of meat, meaning that whenever we're presented with meat, we must have an evidence, have some sort of some sort of proof that this meat that we're being presented is that we are being presented with is halal, in order for us to be able to consume it. We must have some Muslim telling us that this is halal, or we must have some evidence for that. Otherwise, any meat or any food item that we're presented with which might have some sort of meat in it, we're supposed to consider it as haram. The default state of meat items is supposed to be impermissible. Second is the matters of relationship between men and women. So unless someone is our mother, or it's our daughter, or it's our sister, or someone who's related with us with a bond of blood, and that relationship has been made permissible to us, every other female or male for female, or female for male, is impermissible and haram to them, unless there is a relationship of nikah that has been established between them. So every woman, we're supposed to treat them as that they are haram on us. It is not permissible for us to touch them, or interact with them, or be close to them without any need. So these two matters. And third is, unless there is an explicit prohibition that is found in there. So everything else, other than meat and these relationship matters, everything else, the default state is of permissibility, which means that we can go ahead with it unless we find an explicit prohibition. So that means that we need to look at, especially in the realm of financial matters, we need to look for those prohibitions which have been mentioned to us by Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So generally they are divided into, or they're explained as there's 8 prohibitions in financial dealings that we need to be aware of. First and foremost, general prohibitions such as dealing with pork, wine, unslaughtered meat, and items like that which are impure, najis, or which are generally haram. So that is something that every single one of us understands. Second is any financial transaction which has riba in it, interest in it, usury in it, is different names. That is also prohibited. That transaction, we're not allowed to earn from it. We're not allowed to enter that financial transaction. Third is excessive uncertainty. Excessive uncertainty, I'll go on later and explain what excessive uncertainty is. But an example of that, just to give you an example, is insurance contracts. So they have excessive uncertainty. We'll discuss this, inshallah, after later. I'll go through with you with riba and insurance contracts. Excessive uncertainty. Fourth is gharar, fourth is timar, which is gambling. Right? So we all understand gambling. Gambling is also, if a transaction consists of a matter which is gambling, which looks like gambling, it results in something which is the sort of gambling, then it is also impermissible. For example, just today someone asked me a question about some app where you pay some money, maybe a pound or so, and you become a part, you enter into that, you buy that, purchase that app, or you become a member of that app. And then there are some rewards that are given to you. You do some actions, you play a game, and it's possible that you might win and you'll get something back. You might get £5 in return, or €5 in return. Or it's possible that you might not get anything. You'll lose everything. You won't get any return back. So this is an example of gambling, where a person puts in some money and either they will win it all back and maybe even more, or they will go home with nothing, or even less than what they already had. So this is an example of gambling. So apps like these and transactions like these are very common nowadays, where people very easily become they start to do them because they see like a dream of getting, they've been given hope of getting a big reward, become rich quick schemes. So they try that whatever financial transaction that we're dealing in, it does not contain gambling. Other than that, there's hoarding, ihtikar, and there is concealment of wealth and one or two other elements. But those pertain to macroeconomic matters, meaning that those are not for us to deal with at the moment. That we're not responsible for or to be concerned with if someone is not paying their zakah, or if someone is hoarding some sort of a commodity. That is a matter for the government to decide, or an authority to decide. So what concerns us is mostly riba that we need to understand, excessive uncertainty, gambling, and one last thing which I forgot, which is law of contract, violation of the law of contract. So in British common law, for example, British common law is the one that was practiced in the UK and many of the colonies that were, that UK ruled earlier in the colonial periods. So they had British common law. British common law has a chapter which is the law of contract. So any contract that is performed in within that jurisdiction, it must fulfill that law of contract. It must fall under that law of contract. Islam also has a similar version of that law of contract, which means that if something is against the law of contract in British law, it is deemed illegal, impermissible. It is something invalid. It is not considered anything. That contract will be nullified. It will have to be reversed, or it might even be something which becomes a crime. Similarly, in Islam, we have something similar to that, which we can consider as the law of contract. Some basic elements of the law of the contract which must be ensured and fulfilled, and if they are not fulfilled, that will deem that contract to become invalid in the eyes of Islam. It will deem it to become, it could be haram, or it could be disliked, or it could be impermissible in some other, in the grade that you have, whether it's haram and it's disliked, and the different grades. So it could be something which is sinful. It can become the transaction can become sinful for the person to conduct. So the violation of the law of contract. So these 3 to 4 things are the most important things that we need to be aware of. And obviously, this session is not the time, and this session is not sufficient to go through the details of every single one of them. But I will just give you a brief introduction, and I will leave it up to you and your scholars. Perhaps you can demand from them to give you a detailed course in this, and to explain to you how these transactions, how we can be aware of them, how we can learn about them, and then perhaps how we can try to avoid them in our financial transactions. Firstly, being riba, interest. Interest is something which has been forbidden in the Quran clearly. There is no other sin which carries such a high punishment or such a high warning, such as that riba carries. So in the Quran, the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly mentioned, if someone continues to eat and take riba, they should prepare for war. They should prepare to go in battle against Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? So riba is such a severe sin. And in a hadith, in a narration, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clearly mentioned that it is not just about earning riba, taking it, but rather the one who takes it, the one who pays it, the one who witnesses to the transaction, and the one who records it. The Prophet ﷺ said they're all alike, they're all same in the sin of riba. So essentially, Islam wants to root out the system of riba, any system which is built on riba. Why? Because there's many reasons, there's many logics. First and foremost is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has deemed it to be impermissible. It is prohibited by Allah and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the first and foremost thing, and perhaps even the end of story, because logics and rationales can be argued. I can give you 5 different rationales behind it, but I'm sure 5 of you or maybe 10 of you will come up with 10 arguments against those 5 rationales that I provide to you. Right? There's exploitation and there's so many other things, but definitely there will be people who will say that no, there's So this is another debate. What is the status of rationals in the rulings of Quran and of Sharia? How much stock are we to give to these rationales? But keeping that aside for the moment, and let's just assume that, and it is forbidden by the Quran and the Sunnah. What is riba? How do you define riba and interest? Right? So generally, it is defined by any increase over and above the principal, which is conditional in and under a contractual obligation. So meaning that there is a debt which is created. That debt could be through a personal loan. Someone gave a loan to another brother. I gave a loan to Sheikh, and there's a liability created on Sheikh, and he has to return that €100 to me. Now, in this financial transaction, if I demand from him, whether through the contract, whether through market practice, or just whether through agreement between ourselves, I ask him to pay me back over and above this principle, anything, €5 or €10 or any amount, whether it's a fixed amount or is a percentage amount, this will be considered impermissible, and this will be considered riba. This also comes into if someone sold an asset, sold something on deferred payments. So they fixed a price, let's say, once again, €120 for an asset. And then once that person delayed, they demanded more than what was due, what was the original principal, which was €120. This would also be considered riba. Someone owed us rent, and they delayed paying their rent for 3 months, and we demanded over and above the actual rent amount. This would also be considered riba. So all of these are examples where there is a liability, where there's a debt or a loan, and the lender is demanding, or the contract is demanding, that the borrower pay over and above any excess over and above the principal in a contractual obligation. That is deemed to be riba. So we need to look into our transactions. So financial penalty is another example of riba, where there is something due, as I mentioned, in a contract of rent, or in any we owe fees for some services that were provided to us to some organization, and we delay their payments, and then for delaying the payments they charge us a penalty. So it is highly likely that excess they're charging us is actually riba. So we need to be aware of when we are making late payments. Try not to make late payments in such cases. So this is generally the discussion of riba, and obviously it is found in conventional banking, which is based on interest, and whether it is in the saving accounts or whether it is on the advances side, where someone takes a loan and they pay back that loan along with the principal along with the interest amount, that is also considered riba. Second thing, which is prohibited, or which we need to be aware of, is excessive uncertainty. Excessive uncertainty, we can define it as any contract or any transaction where the outcome is unknown. So either the price is known, but we do not know what the subject matter of that transaction is. For example, the insurance contract I spoke about. So insurance contract contains excessive uncertainty. Why? Because you pay a certain amount, the premium is fixed, it is known, you pay a premium for a year, and then against it, in return for that premium, the insurance company is going to give you, if there is a loss or a damage to your asset, they're going to pay you a certain amount. But even they don't know what that amount is going to be. It could be 10 times your premium amount, or it could be 5 times your premium amount, or it's possible that nothing happens and they don't pay anything on top, over and beyond. So all of these cases, which means that the outcome of this transaction is not known. Islam says it must be known. The law of contract, as I mentioned to you, law of contract defines some elements. It defines the contracting parties, it defines the wordings of the contract, it defines the subject matter, and it defines the price that is to be paid for it against it. So if there is any uncertainty in any of one of these transactions, any of one of these elements, it means that this transaction is going to have excessive uncertainty. This uncertainty could have been removed from this contract, but it was not. So this is the example of insurance where there is excessive uncertainty because the subject matter is not known. Obviously, a question which is going to come to your mind is that living in these lands, it is obviously illegal to drive a car, or perhaps there's many of the assets that you cannot own unless you have insurance. So naturally, for the need, unless we have, best case scenario would be that there is an alternative to insurance, which is Islamic insurance or takaful. So the best case scenario would be to have a takaful company or financial service provider which was providing you takaful contracts, and through that you can cover your risks. There is no harm in trying to cover the risk. It is just the way the risk is being covered that is impermissible. So if you cover the risk, you mitigate your risk, but you do it through a permissible means, that's perfectly fine. That would be the best case scenario. But since that's not possible in these lands, so then obviously we're left with the one scenario where we must take out insurance in order to obviously oblige by the law of the land, because we must, wherever we're living, Islam also encourages us, rather mandates us to oblige by the law. We cannot, go ahead and by breaking it or violating the law. So we can take insurance, but it must be to the minimum level that is possible, that is there in order to meet the obligations of the law. We cannot go above and beyond that. We cannot go and try to take extra benefit through the insurance contracts. Why? Because that is, as I mentioned, that is excessive uncertainty, and that is impermissible. Okay, so and then after excessive uncertainty, as I mentioned, you have the violation of the law of contract, or we can speak about gambling first. Gambling is quite clear. Gambling is a contract or a financial transaction where you pay something, or a few people come together and they pay something, and either one or few of the parties will either take away all of the returns of that transaction, and the rest of them will go home with nothing. Right, so that is, as you know, that is a gambling transaction where people put in money and only one person or a few people win and the rest of them don't get anything back. So the reason for it being permissible, other than, it's explicitly mentioned in the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has deemed it to be invalid and to be prohibited. But one of the main reasons, or one of the more main causes, underlying reasoning, is that it also violates the law of contract. It's very similar to the insurance contract, where you don't know what you're going to get in return, right? So either one person might take away everything, or you might get everything from you might earn money from everyone else. So gambling contracts are impermissible, and then violation of the law of contract, which I defined to you, that every contract has some basic elements, which are four, right? So just to give you a summary, which are the transacting parties, the two people who are two or multiple people who are transacting, the words of the contract, the subject matter of the contract, and the price that is going to be paid for that contract, or the counter value against the subject matter. So these four basic elements must be present with all their conditions in order for a contract to be valid. And sometimes they're not present. Sometimes for example, and it's a very hot topic, many of you might know it, drop shipping. One of the reasons why drop shipping is not permissible is because it violates the law of contract. Because the law of contract says that you must own and be in the possession, whether actual or constructive possession of the subject matter that you're selling in a sale transaction. And in the drop shipping contracts, the person who's running the store, they do not become owners of that contract. So I'm not going to go into details. Those of you who understand what drop shipping is, I'm sure that they will have understood what I'm talking about. Other than that, we can discuss it afterwards. Moving forward, so the violation of the law of contract is one of the most important elements that we must be aware of, and that we must, try to follow and ensure. And obviously that needs detailed discussion. That needs another session of maybe 2-3 hours to be able to understand all the elements. And obviously, as I said, your shuyukh here can perhaps give you a detailed guidelines on this, do a short course for this for you. So then the question is that when we speak about the formal financial sector, and we speak about Islamic finance. So Islamic finance is basically defined as finance or financial services or products which comply to the principles of Islam, which I just briefly mentioned. They do not carry and contain these prohibitions such as riba, violation of the law of. So this is also very important to note, that just because there is no riba in a transaction or in a matter, that does not automatically make it permissible. We also need to see if it violates the law of contract or not, if it adheres to it or not. If it doesn't, then it is also not permissible. So Islamic finance is not just about eliminating riba, but it's also about getting rid of excessive uncertainty. It's about making sure that there is no gambling, element of gambling in our contracts and our transactions. And fourthly, ensuring that our matters, our financial matters, they adhere to the law of the Islamic law of contract. So the Islamic financial sector provides an alternative to that. There are alternatives such as Islamic saving accounts. So in the UK, in my presentation, I have some of the banks which provide Islamic saving accounts in the UK. I'm not aware if there is any financial service provider or a bank which has a similar product for the people in here in Norway. But the point is to firstly understand that there are alternatives present to us. You know, our elders and perhaps even many of the people in this room might have faced a loss. It is although an opportunity loss, I'm not saying that it is an actual loss, but it is a loss where they were not able to completely benefit from the financial system because they kept their money in the current account, or they kept their money out of the banks. They did not deal with it. Why? Because they did not want to deal with riba, which is impermissible. But when there is an alternative present, it's been 50 years, it's been going on, the structures are, they're in practice all around the world, then why is it that we can't, try and replicate those systems here, replicate those things, those financial products for ourselves here, and obviously staying within the bounds of the regulations and the law, and staying within the realms of whatever is permissible from the perspective of from the legal perspective. But it is doable. It is commercially viable. No one can say it's not commercially viable because there are, as I said, there's 15 countries where Islamic finance, Islamic banking is systematically important to the economic system of that country, right? So it is definitely economically viable, it is financially viable, it is perfectly doable, but it is a matter of us realizing that there is a potential for something and we need to, understand it, learn it, and perhaps ask for it or work on it as a community. And obviously therein lie the answer to many of our problems that we face when we live in these lands and we can't own a home, or we are not able to get a better car, or we're not able to buy, something which we might need for use at home, but we don't have the cash to get it, and then either we go towards an interest-based loan, or we just live without it and continue to suffer from the consequences. So Islamic finance provides saving accounts, so they give you a return. The difference is that conventional saving accounts are going to be based on interest-based transactions. The underlying contract is going to be of qard, is going to be of a loan, and then against that the bank is going to be giving you interest. But in an Islamic financial institution or a bank or an Islamic saving account, perhaps it can be based on partnership basis, where the bank partners with you, takes your money and provides finance for perhaps someone who's looking for a house, and buys them a house, earns a profit on top of that, and then that shares that profit with the saving account holder and themselves. So that is one way that it could be possibly done. The more important or the more relevant topic here would be how to do it, how to do halal mortgages. So what is the difference between conventional mortgage and a halal mortgage? Conventional mortgage is a simple loan contract where a customer or a person goes to the bank, they take out a loan, the bank has them sign a loan contract, a finance contract, and through that loan contract, they give you the money. Through that money, a house is bought, and then that house is mortgaged as a security. It's kept as a pledge, or whichever word you want to use, is kept as a security with the bank. So just in case if you default on that loan, the bank can recover its money through that house, through the sale of foreclosure of the house. So that is how a conventional mortgage works. Now, the purpose and the objective of owning a house is perfectly fine, acceptable, permissible. Islam has nothing against it. It's just the way it is being done is not permissible, which is through a loan contract. So how could perhaps it be structured in a permissible way? One way is to do it through a declining partnership method, where the bank, for example, gives 80. So let's suppose there's a house which is worth 100 euros, and 80 euros is given by the bank. I'm sure we would all love to have a house which is worth 100 euros, but 80 euros is given by the, basically 80% is given by the bank, and 20% or 20 euros is given by the customer, which is you. And then through this money, a partnership is made on that house. So the bank and yourself as a customer, or ourselves as customers, we own that house in partnership, which also means that we share in the risks and rewards of that house. So if something happens to that house, some damage happens to it, then we're both liable for the damage as per the ratio of our ownership. So 80-20, that partnership starts. Now, since we are going to be using that house and living in it, we start to pay rent. The bank charges us, the financial institution or the financier charges us rent for using that house. And then, since we need to transfer that 80% to ourselves, the eventual purpose is to become owner of that house. We purchase a unit or purchase a part of the ownership of the bank every month or every year, a part of it, and eventually over the period of time, we become owners, complete owners of that house. So these are obviously happening all over the world. In the East, this is prevalent. In the West, in the US, in Canada, and in the UK, there are some models that are doing it. And obviously they're a bit more costly for a few reasons. Obviously one of them being that, economies of scale are not present. There's only a few institutions and a few customers. So if there were more customers, if there were more people, there were more investors, the rate of return expectation was a bit lower, then that would mean that it would become more accessible for everyone across the country, perhaps across Europe. So it is doable, it is possible, it is happening. It's just about trying to replicate it, obviously staying within the legal framework of the country, within the financial framework of the country. So this is one model, and there are other models which are being followed, but for the sake of shortage of time, I'm going to skip them and we can discuss them afterwards if anyone has any specific questions. Another topic that I wanted to discuss was, and because I think it's a hot topic nowadays and people always ask questions about is the topic of crypto assets, right? So generally, Islam is not against intangible financial assets. Islam does not say that something has to be tangible, something has to be, present in flesh for us to be able to call it a thing of value. Rather, an asset can be intangible. An example of that is copyrights. So let's suppose if I write a book and someone wants to publish it and I have it copyrighted, I can sue them and I will not allow them to publish it without my permission or without giving me royalty or without buying the rights to publish that book from me. So now if you look at it, the rights, these copyrights, or this could also be said for softwares. Softwares also have copyright protection. But if you look at it, they're not any tangible asset. The book does not exist, or the software does not exist outside the computer system or outside the code that's there. Yet, Islam recognizes this to be a thing of value and allows for us to be able to sell and buy these copyrights. So, case in point, and the purpose of explaining this is that Islam does not only recognize tangible assets, but rather intangible assets are also permissible. So now that brings us to the question of crypto assets, which are also intangible, whether they're cryptocurrencies or they're NFTs or so many other things that fall in this domain. But generally, and more specifically, I'll talk about cryptocurrencies or crypto assets and leaving NFTs and everything else on the side. So the general opinion about cryptocurrencies and crypto assets of majority of the scholars so far, whether they're from Arab countries, whether from the Indo-Pak subcontinent, whether from the Malaysia, Indonesia, other places, generally you will not find any famous, credible scholar or any body of scholars that has outrightly allowed the sale and purchase of crypto assets, especially cryptocurrencies to be more precise. And the reason for that obviously is not whether they are permissible or not, but it is sort of a way to stop speculation. Because the purpose of a currency is that it is used as a medium of exchange, right? So we're supposed to be able to buy something with it. That's the purpose of it. If tomorrow, if someone were to tell us that your salary or your income or your profits, they're going to come in a currency which fluctuates a lot. It's possible that when by the time you get your income or your salary, either it will have 5x, become 5 times more valuable, or it will have become trash. It will lost nearly all of its value. So we will definitely say to the person that please don't give us our salary in this type of money. We would rather have it in a currency which is stable. So this stability is a basic part of a currency, and this is something which is not found so far in most of these cryptocurrencies, and some of them are just obviously speculative. Some of them are fake, or they are used as a fraudulent means of getting money from the common man, from the lay person. So definitely someone who is not aware of them, and if a scholar, if a credible scholar goes outright and gives a fatwa that go ahead and deal with it and transact in it, it will definitely result in a lot of people, a lot of simple people losing their money. So sometimes the scholars hesitate before moving forward, perhaps not because inherently that thing is impermissible, but rather because there are some external factors that also govern their fatwa, they also govern their opinion, and it is possible that if they were to go ahead with it, it would cause, some damage to the normal man, to the common man. But generally speaking, going back to, I just went into the opinion, but if we were to analyze these crypto assets and cryptocurrencies, in order for something to be a thing of value in Islam, there are 3 requirements that it must fulfill. First requirement is that it must have social acceptance and social recognition. The people, the community. So, for example, if me and one of the brothers here, we agreed on giving value to a handful of dirt, it would not become valuable in the eyes of Sharia or of Islam, because that is just, mutual consent. Perhaps it's collusion between 2 of us to do some sort of a wrong transaction or false transaction. Rather, it has to be acceptable. It has to have social acceptance and recognition amongst the whole community. So if we look at crypto assets, currently they do have some level of social acceptance, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's Ethereum, or the major currencies. They do seem to have some sort of a recognition and acceptance amongst the masses, amongst a big crowd of people. Second requirement would be for it to be a store of value, and this is where one of the problem comes in, that crypto assets don't seem to be a very safe store of value, because their rates keep fluctuating. And another requirement is storability, that they must be able to hold the value that they have, as in to be able to store it. So definitely they're digital assets, and they've proven over time that they can store the value. It's not that the value is going to the asset is going to disappear overnight. They generally they're long lasting, and they remain. And the third and the fourth one is to have permissible use. So the underlying project or the source where they're being generated from, it should be a permissible project, or a permissible thing to do, or permissible action. So if that contains riba, the project contains riba, the project contains violation of the law of contract, or it contains gharar, and gharar, or excessive uncertainty, then that would mean that currency is not suitable to be called Sharia compliant or permissible or halal. So generally these things are supposed to be looked at when we look at an asset to be a thing of value. So when we look at crypto assets, we generally find that to some extent they fulfill these requirements. But to be able to call it a currency, as I mentioned earlier, calling it a currency is a different story altogether, because a currency must be stable, and these assets don't seem to be stable at the moment. So there's a bigger debate and more of a discussion on whether they can be currencies or not. But generally, in being assets, these things we find that these general conditions, we find them to have, we seem to see these conditions and we can find these conditions in these crypto assets. But as I said, I would not go ahead and give a blanket fatwa or opinion, or even, you know, tell someone else's opinion in front of everyone. Why? Because it's something where all the senior scholars so far have been cautious about it. So I would, if I was already involved in it and I understood it, and if I was doing it with these requirements, fulfilling these requirements, then that would be a different story. But for someone else to ask and say that, should I start trading from tomorrow? I would definitely say to be cautious. And I was advised against it because most of the senior scholars of the world are not on board on the, the permissibility of this, or openly allowing it till now. One last thing which I've briefly discussed, which is the alternative to insurance, which is Islamic insurance or takaful. There are models which exist for it, and as I said, as we need to work towards Islamic banking or maybe halal mortgages, similarly, we could be working towards a halal model for that. These are models which are based on mutual cooperation, where some people come together, they pool their money together in order to help the person who has had a loss. So if they're structured in the right way, in the Sharia compliant way, it is possible that we could have alternatives to that. And lastly, technology brings fintech, financial technologies. They make it much easier for us. The evolving landscape of formal financial sector it shows that legacy banks and legacy organizations are eventually going to go in the background. And it is the fintechs, the financial technology companies, that are going to take charge, and they're going to be connecting with the customers. They're going to be providing them with the support they need and with the products they need. They're going to be customizing it for their customers. So fintech brings along with it an opportunity which can be exploited, which can be used by the communities, by the youth who know, who are well versed in technologies, and they're also, they understand a little bit of finance, and they can bring the two together to serve Muslim communities and the whole communities at large, because Islamic finance does not only bring benefits to Muslims and believers, but rather they also bring benefits to the public at large, because debt-based systems historically have been proven to be harmful to the society. Debt-based contracts generally lead to speculative financial instruments. That leads to bubbles, financial bubbles. And when those financial bubbles burst, it's the common man who suffers, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. So the harm of these financial bubbles and these recessions is not limited to Muslims. It is widespread amongst everyone. Everyone suffers from it. Every person suffers from it. So to provide an answer to this debt-based system, it would actually be doing a service not just to the Muslim community, but to everyone at large. And lastly, we have tried our best to present Islam in its most complete form, but we cannot present it completely unless we integrate and we bring about the financial sector and the financial guidelines of Islam along with it. That is what will truly bring the right picture of Islam in front of the people, and it will be a big work of da'wah if we can pick up this task that has been, left untouched for the past few decades, and perhaps try to work on it and come up with solutions that are helpful for our communities and for generally for humanity at large. And with this, I end my talk. And if there are any questions, inshallah, let us discuss each other through questions, inshallah. Yes, brother, please.
Brother, thank you very much. It was a very interesting talk, and I wish you had 3 hours and not like 30 minutes. A comment and a question, if I may. So, comment is that you mentioned that it's obvious that these products might be more costly. It might be obvious to you and me, but there is no willingness to pay actually. So, my sister, 15 years ago, she tried to develop this product at the biggest bank in Norway, which is called the NB, and she had focus groups, but our Muslim community was not willing to pay the extra amount that product would cost. So we could have had it 15 years ago. So there is an issue here that we expect it to be cheaper somehow. So that's a comment. But my question is more about, you talk about interest and riba as if it's the same thing. My understanding is that riba is more like super profit, and interest has an inflationary element in it, right? So if in your example, when you're kind of lending money to a brother, let's say I lend 100,000 to the brother over here, and if he's giving it back to me in 1 week, that's fine. But if he's borrowing it for like 2 years or 3 years, the value of those 100,000 is not the same, right? So rather, I would like to not lend him the 1,000 NOx. I will, sorry, 100,000 NOx. I would rather lend him, a gold bar, and tell him, give me back the gold bar, whatever that's worth, right? So can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so yes, the first question, or first not question, first comment I want to add on to that practically we've seen that is an issue. You're absolutely right. Muslim businessmen, they want to pray, they want to do Hajj, they want to do everything, but they don't want to pay anything extra if they have to do it in the right way. They would rather deal in interest than pay extra, a few percentage points extra to do it in a halal manner. So that is a problem. And another thing is, obviously we call it COBM, cost of being Muslim. So you're absolutely right that we should not be charged the cost of being Muslim, but we have to start somewhere. That's the thing. And I can understand that if a large bank, a large commercial organization would probably not okay such a project. But that's why I say that I look to the youth, and I look to our young brothers, and I say that fintech might be the answer. Fintech might be able to change that scenario. Secondly, yes, in terms of you're correct in terms of the point that money loses its value along the time, and I think you answered the question by yourself that the Islam gives a law, a principle, which is that interest is impermissible, it is prohibited. Now, whether it is in this form or whether it is in that form, whether it is to recover time value of money, whether it is to recover opportunity loss. It could be someone might say tomorrow that, I'm giving you 100,000. If I could have put it in my saving account, I would have earned 2% on it. So that is my opportunity loss. So pay me that much at least. So one could also justify that, no, I'm not charging him anything. I'm not charging him interest, or I'm not charging him riba, but I'm charging him just my opportunity loss. So Islam categorically forbids and prohibits riba. And the response or the solution to the problem that we're faced with, and we must understand that this problem did not come up with, it wasn't there back in the days. It is inherent to the fiat currency, right? So if, for example, just because there is an issue with fiat currency, we cannot go about changing the basic principle. So the principle remains the same, that riba in any form, even if it's just with one rupee or one krone or 1 pound or dollar, euro, whatever, even that would be impermissible. And the solution, if someone has if someone is faced with such a problem where they know that they're going to lose money due to they're going to lose the value due to inflation, then they can go ahead and do it in perhaps gold or in some other currency or in some other manner. That would be the answer to it, but that would not. That is not a huge enough problem that we would have to go back and change the principles of Islam, right? So that's my comment on that.
Thank you for your time. Yeah. My question is regarding investing in stocks.
Yeah.
So when I look at a company and I want to see if I can invest in this company, even though I find some companies they're not involved in haram, but in general they have debts and they have riba involved in the company by itself. So how do people go about this?
So Allah sent you as a reminder for me, because this was a part of my presentation, but I forgot because I didn't have the presentation in front of me. So yes, in terms of stocks, the brother is absolutely correct that it is not just about what are stocks. Stocks are papers, or this asset, I guess you can call it, which represents fractional ownership in a business. So when we buy a stock, it's not just about seeing if the underlying company is only dealing in a permissible thing. So it could be a pharma company, or it could be a tech company, and perhaps they could be making mobile phones. But the scholars have defined some other criteria. There's about four ratios that we must be aware of. And we can, obviously, for those brothers who are interested in dealing with or in investing in stocks, we can maybe sit down and discuss them later on. But generally, One ratio is the ratio of interest-bearing debt to total assets should be less than 37%. Right, so there's different opinions. Some make it 37, 33%. Some change it. Some call it 50%. But the ratio of interest-bearing debts that a company has, right, and its total assets. So when you divide the two, the ratio should be less than 37%. So that's the first thing. The second is the ratio of non-Sharia compliant investments. So where they've invested, and which are Sharia non-compliant, which are impermissible. The ratio of that to the total assets should be less than 33%. Right? So they're basically all their investments, wherever they've invested, and the Sharia non-compliant or impermissible investments, the ratio of that when divided by their total assets should be less than 33%. That's the second criteria. And the third is the Sharia non-compliant income or impermissible income to the total revenue. So generally when a company is, for example, a pharma company, they're earning from the sales of their medicines, but at times they're holding onto bonds, or they have some bank accounts which are interest bearing. So if that income becomes more than 5% of the total revenue, then in that case, that is also considered to be not permissible to invest in. And then another one is the ratio of illiquid assets to total assets should be at least 25%. But that generally is because if it's a running business, so their illiquid assets are generally more than 25% because they will have, property, equipment, plants, and everything. So it won't be that they will have more than 75% of cash. So, but that is just for trading and buying in new businesses. So, and these criteria can be found online. If you go search on IOFI, IOFI is Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions, which issues standards, accounting standards, and fiqh standards for Islamic financial institutions. It is based in Bahrain. It has been working for the past 30 years and has issued more than 60 standards from a fiqh perspective, and about like 25 or 30 standards from accounting perspective, and 5 governance standards. So and they have been adopted all over the world. So they also have their own criteria, which mentions these same ratios, and you can just look at those ones, and then when you are investing in a stock, you can use that criteria to know whether to screen whether this stock or this company is permissible for me to invest in or not. But this is also an idea in the sense that I'm not sure if there is an app or a business which is doing this for Norway, but in the UK or in the US, they have apps that are doing this screening for you. So you would pay a fee, and they would let you know which company, and they would keep updating this according to the numbers changing. And this is very easy because nowadays you can, you create an agent or do some sort of coding to pick up that financial information from the right sources and give you live updates. As soon as the information is updated, you'll be able to know that this company has become impermissible for me to hold. I need to let it go, or this company has permissible. I can buy it, and so on and so forth. But this could be a good idea for someone to work on. Within Norway, the Norwegian stock exchange, I'm not sure if it's a standalone stock exchange or whether it works together with the Scandinavian countries, but they can come up with an app that does this screening for the Muslims who are interested in investing in these businesses, and maybe even charge them a fee so it can be a profitable business for someone. Yes, brother.
Just adding to that one, I think I wanted to ask you about the app because I know some actually. Like there is one called Usama,
Yeah.
which does it. There is one called Joya Finance, I think.
There's Wahid, and there's some Wahid Invest.
I am told to give the screener. They have like wealth management stuff.
Okay.
But also, I think there is another one, I forgot. But at least Usama is sort of a startup and seed round, and it's pretty good. It doesn't have all the Norwegian stocks, but it has
Some of them.
You can request like, hey, can you add support for this for screening as well?
Yeah, so if someone is interested in them, it's not very difficult to do it themselves. You can even just make like a Excel sheet, Excel or Google sheet, and then just put the ratios in there, and the person just puts in the information, the latest information will give you the result. So it's not too difficult to do. And yes, there are different apps. Just on the similar note of this conversation, when we look at any Islamic financial product, there's generally a question which one we can trust and which one we can't trust. So the easiest way I can say to you is to look for the scholars. Firstly, the certificate that has been issued by their scholars. It is generally called a Sharia certificate or their halal certificate or whatever they might be calling it. And look for the names of those scholars and just Google them and search if they are, what their background is. If they're credible, they have a good, educational standing. They've studied from known scholars and known institutions, and they have sufficient experience, and they're working, and there isn't anything which, basically any announcement against that app from these scholars, and you can go ahead and trust them and invest or purchase that or use that service. And if you find something which lights a red light or raises a red flag, then you might want to stay away from it. But the point is that a layman can trust in the scholars who have been working in this sector, and if they're credible people, you can go ahead and use that service or that app or whatever it is that you're doing. Yes.
I have another question regarding tax and tax loopholes. So I work with auditing, and there's a practice among companies and also individuals. They use different tax loopholes to reduce their taxes, but they're not being really upright honest. They're just using the rules.
So it's simple as if it's tax evasion, it's impermissible. If it's tax avoidance, it's okay. Obviously loopholes are generally left in the system. Like definitely the regulators know. It's not like they don't know that people are doing this, but they know, and sometimes they're left there on purpose. And so as long as it's not tax evasion, if it's tax avoidance, then it's generally fine. It's not, depending on what story that is being told by the person to avoid the tax. If it's not a outright lie, or if it is not something which is totally unethical, then it would be, or something which is sinful, then it would be fine. It might be a gray area, it might be considered unethical, but from an Islamic perspective, it wouldn't be entirely impermissible or prohibited as long as it's not against the law.
I had a question about crypto. You mentioned that you gave the example of copyrights. But in both the cases, both copyright and software programs, there is an effort and there is a product being produced. But in the sense of crypto, you said assigning value in that context. If you just elaborate that a little bit more, because from my view, there is a product being produced there that both the book and the software. But with the crypto, how does the product gain value and how does it?
So, okay, so the question that the brother asked is about, I'll try to explain it in what I have understood, and I'll try to understand in that answer in that same manner. It's about, in the case of a intangible asset such as copyright, there is some sort of a value which is created when someone writes a book. There's an effort they put into it, and there's a value. And obviously then it is that value which is being traded or being sold or being copyrighted. But the brother is asking that in terms of a crypto asset, there does not seem to be any effort or any service underlying it which we can say that there is any value in there. That's the question. So firstly, in the process of mining of crypto assets, cryptocurrencies, there is a lot of effort, right? So there is a lot of energy that is used, and there is a lot of effort. That's one thing. And secondly, value does not, as I mentioned, the value does not come from, it doesn't. There doesn't have to be a particular service underlying it for value to be there. It could just be due to social recognition. So, for example, if you have a property which is worth 100,000 euros today, and it's just lying vacant, and it's a lot or something in the jungle or in the forest, and nothing is happening to it, but without anything happening, as the time will pass, the value of it will increase. Without any development happening on it, without any construction going on. But maybe it's possible that after 30 years or after 50 years, someone might be willing to pay 2 times or 3 times or 4 times the price. But nothing actually happened to it. No development actually happened on the plot. So So where did the value come from? The value came from the two people agreeing, or the buyer agreeing, or the people agreeing that no, this thing is worth more than 100,000 it was worth 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So value is about social recognition. So if a few people come together, a few people or a society comes together and they agree that this thing is worth this much, and it is not an impermissible item or impermissible thing, and it is not it is the agreement, the social agreement or recognition is not for as not being used as a loophole for riba or for anything impermissible, then there's no harm in just it gaining value without any effort. So just to simplify, that value can be created without effort. There doesn't have to be effort lying underneath it. It is just a matter of social recognition amongst people, right? That's what creates value in reality. It is just a perception of a service. Someone perceives this thing to be more valuable. They will, one person will think that, oh, this person did this development on it, and because of this thing has this property has doubled. And another person will say that no, my perception of this service is that it has not doubled its value, maybe 50% increase. Another one might come and say triple. So this is just about the perception of people, it's perception of the society.
Is that not recreating the bubble that we say Islamic finance is, Islamic finance also used?
So the bubbles we spoke about in Islamic finance are debt-based bubbles. Those are fictitious because Islam says that debt is to be recognized at its face value. Increasing the value and considering it to be, just how it is that, we take a debt which is 100,000 and we're like, okay, now we're going to earn 125 from it. And so that Islam says that 25 is just a bubble because Islam does not recognize that interest. So bubbles are those, or unrecognized bubbles, so to speak, are those which are caused by debt, not through actual assets. And that's what Islamic finance or Islamic banking does, is replaces those debt-based transactions with actual assets.
Just a practical question. If you purchase like a computer in normal shop here in Norway, you can choose to pay upfront, like the entire sum, or you can say that I'll pay within 12 months. And so what happens then is that they charge you like a small fee. It could be like 500 crowns, and they say, and you have to pay it upfront. You pay the 500 crowns, and then you can pay as you wish within the 12 months. Number one, is that valid? And there's also another condition that says that if you don't pay at the end of that time period, then the riba starts. So let's say you owe them 20,000 and you manage to pay 18,000, then the next month the riba will start. So what's your opinion on that type of?
So once again, a perfectly fine objective and purpose, a correct transaction, permissible transaction, but achieved through the wrong process, the wrong way. So there's no harm in selling a product, buying a product or owning a product, hiking up its price for a deferred sale against deferred payment and selling it. But doing it in this way where they're charging you a fee, whether they call it a service fee, because essentially they're saying to you that we're selling you this product for this price, which is 100 krone, 100,000, 10,000 krone or whatever, and we're going to charge you this separate fee. Is going to be called a commitment fee or service fee or whatever name they're going to give to it, or transfer fee or something. So that fee is not justified from an Islamic perspective. If they were to rather do it in this way, that add that fee to the price of the actual asset and say to you that, look, the price of this asset is 10,500 and we're going to split it over the next 12 months, then that would become permissible from an Islamic perspective, one. Secondly, but in this case, it would not be allowed to add or increase any price. Any price increase would not be allowed in case the person was not able to pay in the stipulated time. Similarly, the person would not be entitled to any discount if they came after 6 months and said that I want to pay off the liability. Why? Because it was not a liability, it was a sale. The sale was made at 10,500. That was the price of the product. that was decided that it is going to be the price of the product. Now that price cannot be changed, whether due to late payment or whether due to early payment. If it was done in this way, it could be permissible, but I don't think like that 500 fee is sort of problematic. Maybe if they did not charge that extra fee and they just gave you the asset for the product for 10,000, and then you know basically made sure that you did not delay it and you made the payments on time and you did not pay any penalty, there could be some room for you to buy it in that manner.
Another problem is that the 500 extra fee, it's not the shop itself, it's the third party.
So more the reason that it's not even a sale. That makes it worse that it's not a sale, it's rather a loan contract, because someone is giving you a loan, a financer giving you a loan, and they're charging 500 on top. So that is, as we discussed, that is exactly riba.
But example, for many years, almost everybody maybe buy the telephone for 12 months or 24 months.
And pay the fee over and above.
So it is like they said for you in cash, you have to pay 10,000, in 24 months, you have to pay 15,000. So this,
Yeah, that's fine, but are they charging an extra fee on top of that?
no, just like
Yeah, so that is okay. So if they,
I don't know because I always buy cash, but I don't know what happened if I don't pay one time. I don't.
so it's very similar to a credit card.
Yeah.
So the credit card is, especially the conventional credit cards, meaning the interest-based credit cards. So the ruling for that is that if there is a need being, for example, in countries like the US, you have to have a credit card to build credit to get, better credit scores mean lower rent and lower insurance premiums, etc., etc., etc. So if that was the reason, for that the scholars have said, okay, or sometimes there's a need in while you're traveling, right? Sometimes your debit card doesn't work, so you have to use a credit card when you're traveling in the east or some other country where your debit card is not recognized. So for that, the scholars have allowed or given permission to have the minimum level of a credit card. So if your need can be fulfilled with one credit card, you can keep one, but that also is not, does not come with full freedom. Rather, it is with the condition that you will make sure that you never delay any payment and you do not pay any interest for delaying the payment. You make sure that you always pay on time.
I have this MasterCard,
Yeah,
but I never pay any fee.
exactly.
I take it because
Pay it on time.
the insurance,
Yeah,
travel insurance, give me more safety when I
Yeah.
get something online.
yeah.
So I always pay at that time. I don't
Yeah, but you pay right, exactly. So that is the way to go about it, right? That is how we. So this buying something on installments where they might charge you a penalty for delaying a payment would be very similar to this. That if you truly needed that thing, if you had no other option and you needed it for whatever reason, I mean, although the definition of need can be very different, but the need for the latest iPhone, it could be very different for every individual. But there would be some room, I guess you can go ahead with it as long as you make sure that you do not pay over and above. And even in this, the best case scenario would be to avoid it. Why? Because you are still signing a riba contract. You're signing a clause which says that if I delay payment, I will pay riba. Although you're making the intention that you won't do it, you won't let it happen, but you're signing it. That's what matters, right? Your actions speak louder than your words or your intention. So your intention won't justify the contract we've signed. So it would still be better to try not to do it by on cash or to limit our desires and try to stay within the limits. But if obviously someone does it and does not pay the interest, we can't say that they've involved themselves in or they've paid interest. Yes, brother.
If a credit card includes the free travel insurance, is it okay to use that for buying travel and then
Yeah.
have travel insurance?
So the general rule in terms of any benefits, points, and stuff which is provided by the lender. So in the case of the credit card, the bank is the lender because when we swipe the card and we scan it, they give us some money, so we become the borrowers. So riba is when a borrower or someone on behalf of the borrower gives excess over and above the principal to the lender. But if the lender were to give some benefit to the borrower, that would not be riba and that would be considered permissible. So that is the general rule, that since the bank in the case of a transaction of a credit card is the lender, and they are the ones giving us points or something, some additional benefits such as this, it is considered permissible if you use those points or if you use that service.
And again, insurance in itself is something else.
Yeah, that in itself is a debatable, sort of thing.
I'm receiving some questions as well. One question is that in Norway, so it is, so to speak, impossible to buy house with cash. The only method is halal method is to either rent a house, but this doesn't give stability. The children gets disturbed. You yourself get stressed that you have to, you know, move out maybe after 1 and 2 years. So in that case, would it be permissible to buy a house with general mortgage? Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's quite clear the scenario, right? The only time when, so firstly, riba is something which is not vaguely prohibited. It has been prohibited explicitly by the Quran itself, and that's the highest level of prohibition. There is no argument to it against it. Although some people still argue or still try to say that this is the definition of riba is not clear in this issue or this issue, but it is unanimously agreed that riba has been prohibited by the Quran, and this is what riba is. Any excess over and above the principle. So now, in order for something so explicitly prohibited such as riba to be permissible, there would have to be a darura or need which is of the equal level. For example, darura is defined as something which, if a person does not use it or does not go through with it, they will bodily harmed. Bodily harm will come to them, right? They will be caused, either they will lose their life, or they will lose a limb, or they will go near death. That's how severe it will be. So, although I know it's very painful to say, but renting and having this stress, it still isn't the same as going into the mouth of, in the face of going in like near death, having a near death experience. So personally, I don't think, and I think that's the opinion of the majority of the scholars, that they do not allow, even in this case, for someone to go through with buying an interest-based or using an interest-based mortgage, especially considering all the punishments and all the warnings that have been given against this sin. What is the solution? The solution is to work towards maybe a community-based system, maybe raise awareness about it, and trying to come up with a system where, okay, those who suffered, they suffered, but the future generation must not suffer the same way. Maybe they can have a Sharia compliant or permissible alternative to that.
Question regarding that. You are able to buy a house for around 1 million, but the company who built the house set a similar price, like 20 or 25,000 a month. It's called Felleskostnader. I don't know how to translate it into English.
Utilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but those are based on interest or mortgage loan that the company has taken, but we are paying that monthly to the housing company or the society we are living. Is that allowed?
I don't understand the question.
Just for example, if there are the buildings there, they are owned by a company actually.
Yeah.
So you buy the property like Bahria town or there's you are living there, you pay the utility bills for them for the different facilities there.
So debt is not on you, but on the company.
But sometimes to do something in that society, they take loans from the banks, for example.
Okay.
To build the roads.
So the question is not about. So you're paying for the utilities they provide. Yeah. So that's not on you. That's their problem if they're taking the loan for.
Yeah, because here it is not all you can own the apartment 100%.
Mm.
Have some place you can own 100%.
Mm.
Some place here, like in this area, you own, but you still own the apartment, but you don't own the land.
Yeah, just like it's everywhere else, pretty much.
So
Yeah.
we pay 5, 6, 7,000. We don't know for what. Maybe they give some detail, but
Mm.
every 1-2 years they make some stuff. They say, okay, you have to pay 500 extra.
All the builders do this everywhere. Builders do this everywhere in the world.
Finish cost now, they will say finish
Yeah.
cost.
Share cost. But actually, my bad, I translated it wrong because I think you're distinguishing between selleier and borettslag, right? So selleier is you own 100% yourself. But there's another housing scheme where you, let's say, you pay 50% of the value, and then the remaining 50% is in the long-term debt, or which you also down pay monthly, right? So which is taken by the society actually. So and this is in addition to the utilities.
In addition to that, and it is the contract underlying it is a debt contract or a loan contract.
There are different scenarios. For example, there are some societies who give you a little bit cheaper the apartment, but the extra loan they take on themselves and they charge you for that. And some you can
So is it the price? Like, is the price of the apartment or flat fixed? That is going to be for this much?
no, they
Or
will
it
say,
varies?
okay, the market value of that flat is, for example, let's say 1 million, but they will you will pay only half a million. So half a million is on that company, and they will
Take a loan.
take a loan, and they will
They will
charge-
recover it
they
from
recover
you.
from
But what is the contract between you and that company?
It's this loan complex.
It's a loan?
It's a,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a debt contract.
It's shared ownership.
Shared ownership?
Yeah, but the thing is that they're
Yeah.
charging, they will have ownership, but they will release the ownership on the money you pay back with interest.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
they own the part.
So they take they take out the loan and they charge the loan from you and the interest on top. So I mean, it could be structured in a right way. So this is very similar to that declining partnership or musharaka structure. But of course, this is a bit
There are
of a pro.
some like a business model which can be
Easily
formed,
converted,
easily
yeah.
convert to what Sharia compliant is. But again, the problem
It's
is
just
that
about the will.
nobody has bothered about that actually.
Yeah.
The community has been. There are some brothers who try to start some kind of like halal financing of the houses, but I think few bought only maybe 2-3 families. After that, it stopped because
Yeah, so that is the purpose, right? I mean, we need to work towards it, whether it's through community systems or whether it's through current companies that are already there. And that's the point of having the session here, is to understand the severity of the matter, right? I guess that's where we sort of not slack off, but we become relaxed and we consider, we're like, okay, it's okay.
But there are
Who's gonna go
examples.
through
For
that?
example, we have like brothers from Somalia. They are very strict about certain things, at least. So when they became the taxi owners, they said, okay, we have to buy the cars. How can we buy the cars? So they started buying the used cars, and there is some risk of using the used car in the taxi because they are running all the time. So then they talk to the Toyota in Oslo, and they find a model for that. Okay, we will lend you
Yeah,
a
it's-
car. The car price is like 100,000 NOx, and you pay 120 instead of. In 5 years, the car will be yours.
Yeah, so it's definitely possible. Like it could be worked out. It's just realizing that it's not. I would give you a very interesting case study that we've seen this in, especially in Pakistan, where there are bank executives which deal purely in conventional in interest-based financing. Their job is to either design, develop, and sell these products. It's their job. That's what they're doing, and these are pure earning interest on that for the bank and getting salary for it. But when it comes to buying a house, they go to the Islamic finance and they buy it from there. We're very particular about it. Why? Because they don't want that baraka, that not baraka, that negative effect of riba in the house they're living in. They don't want it. So it's just about the sensitivity we have. We have to understand that just because we are paying riba, it does not make it any lesser of a sin. Rather, it is still a part of it, and it can easily be done, and it has been done, as you mentioned. It just takes a bit of effort and some time. Yes, brother.
I think it's very good to have these sessions
Alhamdulillah.
reminding people of the importance of avoiding riba. This brother mentioned some brothers who tried to start halal house financing, that was global housing, I think you mentioned.
and that brother over there mentioned DNB. We also have Sigma F2, which was a masjid in downtown. And we started to try to finance taxis, and there has also been a Somali brother who tried to start Ramas Buli.
I was part of that.
Yes.
It ended now.
Yeah, right. And this brother's wife, she wrote a master thesis about Islamic Sharia courts in whether they can be set up in the Western society. I also wrote a master thesis about diminishing Sharaka with Ijara, whether it's doable under Norwegian law, so I'm also a lawyer. So I think it's important to have. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. But what's the conclusion of your thesis though? Is it possible? Is it doable?
It is doable.
It is doable.
Yeah.
So legally there aren't any hurdles, it's just commercial and
It's commercial hurdles.
Commercial viability.
Tax hurdles,
commercial and tax hurdles.
And also some political as well.
Yes, brothers have been telling you about that. So yeah, so the thing even with the tax hurdles is so that was another issue that people faced in the Eastern context, because naturally their systems were developed on the conventional banking systems, their laws and regulations. But then when the Islamic banks came about and they faced these double taxation issues at times, because Islamic banks they own the assets and then they sell them. So for example, banks are generally not allowed to buy and sell, like regulations and laws don't allow it. But since Islamic banks deal in selling and buying at times, so then they made provision for that in the law. And it's very simple and it's very easy if they agree to if they agree and they come together on doing it. It's all about just adding a word that accept in Islamic banking or ethical finance or something like that, and define it, or define that certain mode, and that would exempt it from the law, from the tax. So that's also doable. Nothing is impossible. It's just, and it has happened. The case studies that it happened, and of course, but I do admit that those case studies were of places where Muslim majority countries, perhaps it was easier political. But even then, it's just because the country is Muslim majority, you're all aware that does not mean that there will be a political will for it, right? So it's still difficult. Every place has their own hurdles, but it's definitely doable. Yes, brother.
You were talking about what is the opinion regarding mutual funds?
Good question. So mutual funds, because mutual funds represent the assets that they own. Every fund, whatever asset is, every fund, whatever asset they're invested in, right? So if that is a money market fund and they have saving accounts and they have bonds or something like that, or if it's an income fund and it has bonds underneath it. So if the bonds are permissible, if they're sukuk, or if they're permissible financial instruments, then the mutual fund would be permissible. So it really depends on looking at what that fund holds, what its holding is. If it is permissible, then it would be considered. But I guess over here it would be a bit difficult, because money market and income funds would be mostly bonds and saving accounts. Maybe equity funds, but even equity funds would have to be screened for that criteria. Like not every single stock would be permissible to hold. So yeah, it's a bit of a challenge, but once again, it's something that's doable. If there's enough will, someone can. We have ESG funds. We have ethically aligned funds. So why not have a fund which only invests in Islamic assets, or permissible assets, so to speak, permissible equities, and then Muslims can invest in there. So it is once again a good idea.
But if the portfolio is majority, let's say 90% companies, but there's some percentage that are owned by ownership in some banks, then I guess it would be not
permissible, because as I mentioned, that one of the criterias to own a stock or a business is that it's the ratio of impermissible income to total revenue should be less than 5%. So obviously, if they're holding banks and the dividends or the revenue that fund would be earning would be a lot more than 5%, I think. So then it wouldn't be permissible to go in and buy it even to begin with. So that would be an issue. Yes, brother. Adios.
My question
must have been said by the Prophet ﷺ. And you have some of the Hanafi ulama today acting upon this hadith, most of them belonging to maybe another inclination. So I wanted to understand what is the Hanafi, or your understanding of this specific Hanafi position. Is this a valid opinion? So I've heard some of the answers that it is not, that Abu Hanifa was speaking about consuming riba instead of giving riba. But the rebuttal I've heard of that is that it is both the same in the sense, if you are applying the hadith, they are both the same, the one who takes it or one who consumes it, the hadith would say equal them both. And of course, or if you say that consuming is a greater sin, then obviously if a greater sin is permissible, then the lesser sin will be permissible. And then comes the question or the issue of, is this Darul Harb or is this...
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, but still they would say that there is a difference between, for example, just taking ghanima, which would only be in Darul Harb, but because this is of mutual consent, it would still be of the permissible matters according to the opinion of Hanifa.
Okay, firstly, I don't know if it was Imam Hanifa or Imam Abu Yusuf.
Abu Hanifa.
You sure? I don't know. Maybe I'm incorrect. I thought maybe it was Imam Abu Yusuf. But regardless, the point is that so there's many aspects as you've mentioned. One being one way to answer the question, or one argument being that would we consider this place to be Darul Harb? If it's Darul Harb, then we would be all in a state of battle. And why are we living here? So this we can't consider this Darul Harb firstly to begin with.
They would say that you have a contract because you have a peace treaty.
Not throughout the world. So it's not Darul Harb anymore. It's not. They have not only allowed us to live here, but they have also allowed us to practice and even so much so preach our religion. And there are some hurdles, but generally there isn't any, no stopping us from having a masjid and all of that. So you cannot consider this Darul Harb. That itself is problematic to even think that this is Darul Harb. Because that is what probably one of the core causes of radicalization. That's where it starts from, where you start considering people around you, as Harbis or something like that. So that itself is problematic. Another thing which. Okay, so it's something that. Yeah, so.
What is it closest to, Darul Harb or Darul Islam?
Yeah, or secondly, the thing what I was saying was that although, so when you look at the opinion of fiqh, whether it's fiqh Hanafi or whether it's fiqh any other fiqh, the fatwa or the rules or the adopted opinion, like there's another opinion of Imam Hanifa where you're allowed to drink something which is intoxicating, a nabidh, as long as it is not up to the limit where it intoxicates. So let's suppose if there's a nabidh is a drink which intoxicates, if you drink like 3, 4, 5 cups or glasses of it, and if you drink maybe 1 cup, it won't intoxicate. So Imam Hanifa says that's also permissible. But we don't drink anything which has any type of an intoxicant, whether 1 cup or whether 10 cups, right? Why? Because the point is, or the point I'm trying to make is that not every opinion that the Imam gave is the adopted opinion in these times or in the times that went by.
Would you say that this opinion was not adopted at the time of Abu Hanifa? Because from what I understood, this was.
Sure, at that time, but as the times went on, there's tabaqatul fuqaha. Right, so we don't sit here today and skip all the generations of the fuqaha between us and Imam Hanifa and go and directly take his opinion. We look at what his students and the students of his students and how they applied that opinion over the period of time. And then we reach to this is what tradition is, this is what the whole, the chain is, that we don't directly take his opinion and go ahead, as we say about hadith, that we don't directly take hadith, we take the interpretation, we see the how the adoption of it by the companions, by different companions, how they acted upon it, how they conveyed it to their students, and then this whole tradition that passes down all the way to us. So we will have to look at how his students and those who came after him and the different scholars in the centuries between us and him, how they adopted this opinion. So coming down till today, majority of the scholars don't consider this opinion to be the one which is the fatwa on, or the adopted opinion rather, so to speak. The adopted opinion is that whether it's in a Muslim country, Muslim majority country, whether you consider it Darul Islam or not, or whether it's this country, wherever we're living, it is not permissible for us to take, charge, or pay interest to anyone.
Would you say it's a valid opinion?
Of course, definitely it's a valid opinion because that's his opinion. He holds it. It's an academic opinion. Every scholar, every credible scholar has a right to have their opinion. So definitely it is based on his understanding. So, but that is not the adopted opinion of fiqh Hanafi, right? So that is not what was understood to be the right understanding. There are many other rulings, as I just mentioned, the issue of nabith. There's many other rulings where we don't take the opinion of Imam, and we take opinion of perhaps Imam Muhammad or Imam Abu Yusuf or some other scholar, right? So it's not just about saying that he had this opinion and we must adopt it, or just because he had it, it is the final opinion.
Question is more like, why does the Barelvis, who also follow the madhab of Hanifa, adopt it?
They should be asked about it, right? So it's their right, right? Yeah, and then again, not all Barelvis. So it's their right to do it. If they decide or choose to have that opinion. As I mentioned, Sheikh Qaradawi has an opinion. So he has his opinion. We disagree with it, right? We say that we don't find it to be the preferred opinion, but it's his opinion. We're not gonna discredit him or say that why he adopted it. He adopted it. That's his thing, but we don't see it to be the preferred opinion. So if someone has it, that's fine. That's the beauty of having a difference of opinion. Yes, brother. Ameen.
Answering the question about the stocks and buying shares, you mentioned that the overall interest-based debt has to be less than 37% of the total assets of the company, and 33 when it comes to the non-Sharia compliant investments. So I understand the reasoning behind the 33, because I said was through the 15, based on the word of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do you have in mind the reasoning for the
37%, I don't have it in mind. I mean, there's one is, some people even go up to 50%. The 50%, yeah, 50% is for aghlab, 33% is wathuluthu kathir, and 10% is 10, some go to 5 or 10%. That is also that, it falls under aghlab, it comes. I'm not sure what exactly is why 37%. At the moment, it's not I don't have it in my mind. But I can definitely, inshallah, try to look it up and pass it on to you, inshallah. Right, so what time is Salah, I think? Alright, so if any more, yes please.
Can you send your presentation to the brothers?
Sure, I'll send it to Brother Waqas and he can pass it to you guys, inshallah.
I have one more question here.
Sure.
So there's another question that the Muslims who do not pay taxes, are the money halal or haram?
So if they don't pay taxes, so the money that's left after or the money that was supposed to go to taxes, so they don't, I mean, of course it does not make the money haram because it is their money which they earn from a permissible way, but of course they do get the sin of disobeying the law or going against that. So the sin is there, the money wouldn't be haram.
I talk about sin because I heard many people, they used to work as flag.
As?
The black market.
Oh, black market,
Yeah,
okay.
And they said, why you do black? Because he said, because the tax money is haram. I said for him, this from my, I said for him, I can't give you a proof to be halal, but you don't have to take anything from government. So you don't pay tax, but you don't get any help from government.
Oh, but you're still driving on the roads, you're still using the electricity, that's not...
I mean here, because when you are not working, maybe some other country will give you this help. Here you can get everything. You can get your rent, you can get salary, you can get everything when you register as you are not working. So when you don't take and don't pay, so maybe it's coming similar.
But no, you can't, because as I said, like you're still, using the infrastructure, everything, right? So, and especially if you have the passport, then you're using that passport and that nationality also. So, not a very valid opinion. Yeah, but there's so many things.
But just a question, have some website. Example, here we're talking about banking system. It is almost how you go, you will find you get some dip or you get some riba when your money. Have some website we can, for example, I get some agreement with some bank, so I can send this agreement to say this agreement that is halal or riba. Have some website we can use
We
it.
have ulama, you can ask.
Yeah, you can ask them, and there's websites. There are agreements available on thing too, but it's not just the contract, because especially when it comes to banks and the profit distribution in banks, it's a bit more complicated just than just having the contract, because you need to have the right. So just if the bank signed the right contract with you, but they continued doing whatever they were doing, without actual profit and loss distribution and sharing, that wouldn't make it permissible. So.
This what I mean. Like example here in schools, they have some this system like sharing. Like you can buy 50% and they own 50%, but they don't know the details.
We can
Right, there is an English term as well.
They like rent to buy.
Rent to buy something. This is as I told
Yeah,
you, they are
yeah.
very near to, but
Yeah, that is one of the model that they have in the UK also,
we just
right?
need
So,
to talk to those companies.
Yeah.
Right now, when we signing like this, we signing as loan, we signing as same system as
rent to buy is generally, it's very close to Islamic, and it can easily be made Islamic, but it's just.
Again, they add these clauses about
Yeah,
different
exactly,
payments and
exactly,
everything like
exactly.
that.
That's what.
so the details, what they writing the details, this is the problem. So here where you said when you like as written, so it is makes this like in the end it is like coming as riba.
Yeah, it could be.
Rent to buy or
Yeah.
buy to rent or like this. It's okay. It's similar.
It's nearer to it's not explicitly riba. It's nearer to the Islamic or permissible mode, but it's just you still have to have a look at the contract and what it says.
This is what I mean because a lot of details here, a lot of details so they don't give you to write to read.
Well, then you can send the contract to Mufti Sahib, and he will read it and tell you if it's alright.
Maybe our own Mufti and Karam ulama, they have some opinion about that as well. It's my bad that I didn't ask them. I just came to know when we started talking about the funds and everything. Our government and the banks where our employers, they put our pension money, they also invest in some.
Yeah,
And a layman, he don't know where the money is, where they are investing it, where they are getting the profit from, and even they have some interest also involved in that. So how, because at the end of the day when he will get 62 or 63 or 65, 67, he will get a certain amount of his pension
From that, yeah.
from that investment that bank or that company did. How responsible we are about that.
So this is it voluntary pension program?
No, it's
compulsory.
It's compulsory. There is a part which government pays, and then the government.
So the salary, when it comes to you, is it deducted after you get your salary directly?
They pay extra for that fund.
Okay, so the employer directly pays it to the government matches it, and then it invests it.
Or the banks.
Yeah, so that there is the opinion is that it's permissible for you to use in this manner when you are not getting it, it's not voluntary, and you're not directly by yourself contributing. Rather, the employer is doing it. So it's actually that was your part of your salary, but they did not give it to you. They withheld it. Instead, they gave it to the government. The government did whatever they wanted to do with it, and now they just owe you that amount, and then they're giving you something additional with it. So them earning the interest is on them. It's not on you in this case.
So I think like in certain banks actually, where this pension fund is, if you sign it actually, there is you have ability to control.
I know, but I'm talking about the layman,
Right.
Yeah.
Those who don't.
Yeah.
But that can also,
This is not everything you can control. There is a certain part of that fund
Control the
you
risk
can,
profile,
you
but
can
not
some profiles you can make, but
Only the
you
risk
cannot.
profile, not the
Yeah, you
detail.
cannot
not the
decide-
actual
You
investments.
can't
Yeah.
decide 100% how you.
And that would be, I think, very, very difficult to control the investment in this, because then the return would be affected largely. Right? So.
You can just change the risk. You want to be in the middle risk or the higher risk or the lower risk, then you will.
Certain banks too actually.
Yeah.
For example, I think DNB now allows you to invest 100% stock.
Yeah.
But rest of the like Surabram, they don't allow you after certain age.
Yeah,
So you have to
everybody
have
does that.
Exactly.
But like after maybe 54 or 55, they do not allow you to
invest in Islam.
Okay, so I hope the session has been, inshallah, beneficial. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me your attention and time and coming to the masjid to attend it. And please make dua. May Allah accept this from us and, make it a means for us to rid ourselves of these this riba and all of these things and bring Islam into our financial lives as well.